Well, hello farmers, and welcome to the harvest season. My name is Al, and this episode I'm all by myself. I know, it's very sad, isn't it? So you'll probably notice this is a reasonably short episode, and that's because we don't want to discuss any of the big topics that I know you're all interested in. With only one of us. Well, personally, I don't think it will be interesting to just hear me talk about any big topics. So, I'm going to cover the news. Basically, it's going to be a short news podcast. These things happen. I'm sure you'll all cope with one short episode. Last time we did this was back in December. So, here we go. So I'll first of all talk about what I've been playing, because I think it's a fun bit of the episode to keep doing, even when it's just me. And then I'll go through the news. And that'll be it. So what have I been playing? I mean, you'll probably guess that I've been playing some Animal Crossing. That's mostly it, but I have actually, and this is, I was debating whether to leave this bit of information off till I was talking to Rochelle, but whatever. We'll discuss it next time. I've been playing a bit of Untitled Game, so I don't think that I'm enjoying it as much as Rochelle does. But I'm going to keep going with it and see how far I get. I think the issue is that I generally like puzzle games, but I'm struggling to get this game, and I'm not quite sure why. I feel like it's in some cases the hints are kind of like really vague, and I'm not quite sure how to do them. So there's a few that I've already had to look up, and I've only done the first level, and it's mainly because I had no clue how to do particular ones. Yeah, I don't know. I generally like puzzle games, but I don't know what it is about this one that I'm just not really getting. But that's okay. I'm going to keep going. It's reasonably fun, and there are some interesting puzzles, but some of them I just don't really get. Anyway, yeah, that's about it. Some Animal Crossing, some Untitled Goose Game, lots of upcoming games that I'm looking forward to playing, but obviously not been playing them yet. Alright, should we talk about the news? So first of all, we have an update for my time at Portia, however you want to say it. Now, this is interesting. I think we've not had an update this year. They went through a period of time where they were releasing updates really quickly, I think. So it's interesting that it's been so long and now we've got a new update. It's not a huge update. It seems to add in a number of new quests, which is obviously very good for those of you who are still playing but have run out of things to do. And the other thing that they've done is that they've got what they're calling the Uplifting Gifts missions. And once you've completed them, you can change your appearance. So that might be something of interest to many of you. Maybe you've decided you want to change your appearance somehow. You can do that. Now, for those who haven't played, it's probably important to note that this isn't the only character customization. You get to choose your appearance at the beginning of the game, but this is for changing it later on. So I first read this and I was like, wait a minute. That seems odd, locking character customization behind a mission. And then I realised that, no, I do remember setting my character's appearance at the beginning of the game. So it's just that you can change it. So that was less annoying for me. Next, we have the Factory Town update. So for those of you who've played Factory Town, there's a new update. And this is the modding and workshop update that we've talked about before. So if you really want to make some really odd or interesting things in Factory Town, maybe you want to make a burger factory is the example they give in their post, go for it, do it. Let your creativity flow. And if you find any interesting ones, or you make any interesting ones, let us know. And I'm always interested in new mods. And I know Rochelle is too. The next thing is that Snacko, the game that we're all very much looking forward to, is now on Steam. That's it. That's the story. you can go over there and wishlist it. And presumably they're going to be posting some news there as well. So I'd go and wishlist it if you want the game, because that'll really help them out. Wishlisting a game on Steam is always a good thing to do. The next bit of news is about Littlewood. So there's a couple of little Littlewood updates. So first of all, we heard a few days ago that there was going to be some big updates coming, and some news about when the 1.0 release will come out. We don't know about that, when that's going to be, but in the next few days from this podcast coming out, it may well be, of course, before the podcast comes out. You know how these things work. It'll probably be just after I finish recording this. But very soon we should be getting information on the 1.0 release date, which is very exciting. And once that's done, hopefully I can get working on the Switch port, and then I can play the game more. Second last, we have just a reminder that the Animal Crossing International Museum Day event starts on Monday after this podcast comes out. So that's the 18th of May, and it runs till the 31st of May. So go get your stamps in the museum. And finally, some very interesting news. We have a new Harvest Moon game announced. This is Harvest Moon One World. And for those of you who aren't constant listeners to the podcast, you might not know that Harvest Moon is not what Harvest Moon was. So the original Harvest Moons were a different company making them in Japan, and then the Natsume, who are the company that localized them, they had the trademark to Harvest Moon. It was obviously called something different in Japan. I can never remember or pronounce. And then they changed who they wanted to localize the game, but Natsume kept the name and started making their own games under that, and the Harvest Moon games, as they were, became Story of Seasons outside of Japan. So any game that is Story of Seasons is what Harvest Moon used to be, and Harvest Moon now is Natsume on their own making games. Now, as we've discussed before, that does not mean that they're bad, although a lot of the Harvest Moon games are bad. But I'm quite looking forward to this one because it's quite an interesting concept. So I'll just give you the quick blurb that they talk about for this. So, can you imagine a world without tomatoes, strawberries, or even cabbage? In the latest entry in the Harvest Moon series, that's the situation players will find themselves in. Only an old book gives hints of what once was. Buoyed by a mystery discovery, players will find themselves setting out on an adventure that spans not only their hometown, but the whole world. What kind of people and places await from the gorgeous beaches of Halo Halo to the snowy mountains of Salmiakki? There's literally an entire world to explore. So there's two interesting things in this. I don't want to talk about them too much just now because I really want to talk to Rochelle about them and see what she thinks. But first of all, it's interesting that they're doing the whole angle from the point of view of all of these plants are in the past and you're having to figure out what they mean. I can't remember which game it was, but I'm sure Rochelle mentioned a game that did a similar sort of thing where you discovered shoeboxes and there were seeds in there of particular plants. So I presume that sort of thing is how it's going to be. You're going to go on quests to find the seeds and then start growing them. I quite like that idea. I also reckon combining that with the title One World, it sounds like it's got a climate change angle to it, which could be interesting. It's not just a farming game, but kind of trying to convince people to help change the world as it is just now, so we don't end up in the situation that this is showing. That's an interesting one. I don't know. I might be making that up, but that's just what it implies to me. And second, the wording of the second part makes it sound like it could be a really big game. So obviously most of these style of games, you're in one town. Maybe you have multiple towns, but really they're not that big. Even ones that have multiple towns, they're not that big. almost sounds like this is an exploration game rather than just a farming game. There are some that even think it could be an MMO, and that's an interesting one. I don't think it'll be an MMO. I think that seems a bit far-fetched. I think it could be a large world without it being an MMO. Could it be an open world? I really don't know. They haven't announced any. They haven't shown any screenshots or given any details other than this. There was a small amount more where they talk about updating the game, but it doesn't give you any more information. Just that there's going to be a new engine and new graphics, and that's really all we know. So hopefully we'll get some new information about it soon. They're saying it's coming out in autumn, but as we know, that could mean anything up till like November, really, which is assuming that they're talking about autumn in the Northern Hemisphere rather than the Southern Hemisphere, because that's like now, basically. So I presume it's not coming out now. So that's Harvest Moon One World. It looks really interesting. I really hope it's good. I'm not one of these people that is anti Natsume because they kept the Harvest Moon name. I think that does lead to extra confusion, but I don't think I think we're past that point, really. Like, there aren't a huge number of people who play farming games who get confused by it. And all you need to say is that Harvest Moon isn't Harvest Moon. Harvest Moon is Story of Seasons, although I guess that's quite confusing still. I'm going to stop waffling about that, but my point is, I really hope this game is good because it sounds interesting, and I want to play this. We'll see what it is. They have announced it's for Nintendo Switch. Not sure if it's coming for anything else. I'm going to presume at this point that it's just for Switch because I think the latest one was. But let's hope it's better than that. So that's all of the news for this point. Again, sorry this episode is so short, but maybe that's a good thing because most of you aren't commuting anymore, so you'll probably have less time for podcasts anyway. So maybe you'll have time for this short 15-minute episode. If you want to find me on Twitter and see me be too excited about Harvest Moon One World before we find any information out and I'm inevitably disappointed, you can find me on Twitter at the ScottBot. That's Scott with one T. You can find Rochelle on Twitter at Miss Delaney. She's not doing a huge amount on Twitter just now, as mentioned in the last episode, but you can find her there. You can follow the podcast at THS Pod. That's THS, the Harvest Season Pod. If you want to contact us via email, you can do that via the website, harvestseason.club. You can, if you want to support us financially, you can do that at Patreon. There's a link on our website, and there'll be a link in the show notes. That's patreon.com/thspod. And I think that's everything for this episode. So until next time, have a good harvest.
The Harvest Season is created by Rochelle Delaney and Al McKinley. Our art is done by Maker the Brave, and our music is done by Nick Burgess. Feel free to visit our website, theharvestseason.club, for show notes, including links to things we discussed and transcripts for every episode. Thanks for listening.